Tonight, a renewed inquiry into the state's ramping crisis in the wake of another death of someone waiting for assistance. The historic Cockle train resumes services after yesterday hitting and killing an American tourist. Thousands attend the funeral of Hamas's deputy leader, with Lebanese militia Hezbollah vowing revenge. And David Warner's baggy greens returned, with wickets falling on both sides in day 3 of the pink test. Good evening, Candice Prosser with ABC News South Australia. The South Australian Premier has acknowledged a vulnerable man who died while waiting 10 hours for an ambulance was a victim of the state's ongoing ramping crisis. An investigation which was already underway into ramping will now look into the Hectorville man's case too, as the state's ambulance service launches its own inquiry. Evelyn Leckie reports.
Pictures shared on social media show Eddie smiling and enjoying outings organised through his disability support provider. The 54-year-old was living in assisted accommodation at a home in Adelaide's eastern suburbs, where flowers have now been left in his memory. Eddie died last week while waiting 10 hours for an ambulance for abdominal pain and vomiting.
My thoughts are with the deceased and their next of kin and their family.
An ambulance should have arrived within an hour, but with high 000 demand and significant hospital ramping, other more urgent call-outs were prioritised. As Eddie's symptoms worsened, his case was changed to a priority 1, but by then it was too late.
Eddie's support provider, Lighthouse Disability, said in a statement it didn't want to comment, other than to say it was deeply saddened by the passing of one of its clients.
The Premier, elected in 2022 on a promise of fixing the ramping crisis, says the government is getting on with the job by bringing 150 extra hospital beds online this year.
Do you think it's fair someone's had to wait 10 hours for an ambulance?
No, absolutely not. Which is exactly why we're making those changes.
We have got a situation in our healthcare system that should make South Australians extremely worried about the way their government is operating.
Overall, the government's goal of reaching a priority 1 patient within 8 minutes has seen major progress since Labor was elected. But the Premier still acknowledges Eddie was a victim of the ramping crisis, with more questions about his case to be answered in the review.
When the priority 1 call was made, the ambulance got there within 4 minutes. So that system worked as it should. The question is, why wasn't that upgraded earlier, and why was the wait so long in the first instance? And that's what the investigation will look into.
An investigation South Australia's health system desperately needs. Evelyn Leckie, ABC News.
The death of a pedestrian struck by the Cockle train has prompted renewed calls for safety upgrades to the heritage and tourist line south of Adelaide. Passengers were on board for almost 2 hours yesterday as emergency services completed their work. The incident is now being investigated by the National Rail Safety Regulator.
Packed with tourists amid the busy school holidays. The Cockle train came to a sudden stop as it approached Victor Harbour yesterday afternoon.
For those of us that were sitting on the side of the scene, I guess, we looked out the windows and saw that, someone had been struck. It was pretty clear. Police
and emergency services were quickly on the scene. The pedestrian, an 87-year-old man on holiday from the United States, died at the scene.
This is a rather devastating tragedy that has affected an elderly gentleman who was a tourist here in South Australia.
The rail line runs along the south coast, metres from the beach. The death has renewed calls from some for safety upgrades for pedestrians.
There can always be upgrades to the area, especially around the Cockle train here with kids, the elderly and whatnot.
Just like a little sign that there's train coming, just a simple one. I mean, it's common sense.
The Cockle train is an exposed line, always has been, and it's really important that when people cross the train line, at any point along it, they do look both ways.
That's a message being reinforced by the operator of the service.
Not to use the railway as a right-of-way. It's like a main road. You just don't walk along the main road. Please don't walk on the railway lines, whether it's here, Adelaide or interstate freight lines.
Steam Ranger's customer service manager also paid his condolences to the victim's family.
It's obviously suffering great loss at this point in time. And also we're looking after our train crew that obviously were traumatised by the event of yesterday.
The death is being investigated by the National Rail Safety Regulator. Mursal Haidari, ABC News.
With the heat and humidity ramping up in the regions, SA Health is urging people to protect themselves from mosquito bites. The recent rain, warm temperatures and humidity levels are providing ideal breeding grounds for mosquitoes, with their numbers expected to peak soon. SA Health is advising people to cover up and use repellent and make use of the free Japanese encephalitis vaccine. The disease has no cure and was one of several infections reported during last year's mosquito season, as well as more than 100 cases of Ross River virus.
It doesn't matter where you are in South Australia, if you get bitten by a mosquito, that mosquito could be carrying one of these diseases. And some of those diseases are potentially fatal.
David Warner's missing baggy green cap is back in his hands after disappearing before his final Test appearance for Australia. A couple of hours before play got underway today at the SCG, Warner announced the special item had been found. The third day of the Pink Cricket Test in Sydney is always Jane McGrath Day, a breast cancer fundraiser named in honour of the late wife of cricketing great Glenn McGrath.
On the pinkest day of the Test in Sydney came a baggy green miracle.
I am pleased and relieved that I've got my baggy back in my hands. Any cricketer knows how special their cap is, and I'll cherish this for the rest of my life.
On the eve of the Test, David Warner made an impassioned plea for the return of the precious cargo after it went missing in transit. Cricket Australia says it was found packed in a bag at the team's Sydney hotel.
This is something that can't be bought in a shop. It's got to be earned. David Warner has earned it. This is a wonderful send-off here at the SCG.
The armchair experts were a little more brutal, blaming the missing merch for the outgoing opener's less than ideal start to the Test.
If they found it first, you might have scored a ton.
From police ponies in pink to patriotic patrons, the SCG was looking blush.
Why not dress up, get amongst it, and all for a good cause?
The McGrath Foundation's goal is to provide all breast cancer patients with support.
Every family, every individual going through breast cancer has access to the free care of a breast care nurse where they live.
Patients say that's invaluable.
It wasn't until I had Charlotte that, you learn more about what each of them is and why is your treatment different to someone else's.
It's been 16 years since the first Jane McGrath Day. In that time, it's grown enormously. Its success is something Glenn McGrath says Jane would have been thrilled with.
To see the whole SCG awash in pink, to see the crowd turn up in pink the way they have, has turned this into a very special event.
The official morning tea fundraiser was the biggest one yet. Even politicians put regular colours aside. Penny Timms, ABC News, Sydney.
Thousands of people have attended the funeral of the Hamas kingpin who was killed in a drone strike earlier in the week. The assassination has stoked the fury of the Lebanese militia who have vowed to retaliate. The US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, is travelling to Israel in the wake of the strike.
Thousands took to the streets of Beirut for Salah al-Aruri's funeral. The first targeted assassination of a Hamas leader outside Palestinian territories since the conflict started in October.
This is a referendum to all Palestinian people who have become part of the resistance.
They marched in an act of defiance against Israel and its ongoing war in Gaza.
Whatever they do, as much as they kill, we are continuing on this path.
At the same time, Israel continues to target Hezbollah cells, launching rockets towards its territory from Lebanon.
The less safe I feel is right here on the road.
But Israelis like Daniela Porat-Penso are waiting and hoping to return home, evacuated to a hotel from her kibbutz just over a kilometre from the Lebanese border.
It's scary, I must say, and we need to be sure that we're safe in order to come and live here again in our homes. So this is our request from our government, from our army. Please make us safe.
We'll apply maximum power with maximum precision everywhere that's needed.
and we have your back.
Thank you.
The Israeli PM met with US officials, pledging what he called a fundamental change to the border with Lebanon and promising evacuated Israelis they would go home. Benjamin Netanyahu didn't specify what that plan would entail, but Israel's defence minister has laid out his vision for Gaza, proposing Israel will keep security control while a Palestinian body runs day-to-day administration and a coalition of other countries oversees a rebuild, all dependent on when or if Israel defeats Hamas. Alison Horn, ABC News, Jerusalem.
The death toll from a powerful earthquake which struck central Japan on New Year's Day has risen to 84 people, with almost 180 still missing, including a teenage boy. Rescue workers are still combing through rubble and damaged houses, but hopes are fading of finding survivors due to freezing temperatures and aftershocks. In Ishikawa Prefecture, more than 33,000 people are in evacuation shelters where food and heating are limited. Most historic buildings in Wajima were destroyed or incinerated in the quake. The mayor says the fishing town is still short on supplies. There's no running water and roads are cut off. Europe and the UK have been battling extreme weather conditions, with flooding and bitterly cold conditions sweeping across parts of the continent. Hundreds of motorists were stuck overnight in Sweden, where heavy snowfalls and icy conditions caused mass traffic jams.
Northern Sweden is shivering through extreme conditions, with power outages in towns cut off by heavy snow.
I got up to see how cold it was, and it was minus 38, so the only thing to do was fire up the stove.
The army was called in to help the 1,000 trapped truck drivers stuck on the main highways. The cold wave hit Finland too, with Lapland in the grip of a record-breaking minus 43 degrees. Temperature records also tumbled in Estonia as parts of the country turned into a winter wonderland.
It's very cold. After half an hour, it's not possible to walk anymore.
Further south, Belgium is reeling from a tornado that left dozens of homes uninhabitable.
Suddenly it was pitch black. Everything started to blow. It was terribly noisy. I thought it was a gigantic hailstorm. There was so much noise.
The Belgian lowlands were hit by floods after a spate of heavy downpours. In neighbouring Germany, some farmers are facing what they say is unprecedented flooding. The Chancellor taking time out to inspect the damage and promising more government support. In northern France, residents were rescued from inundated homes in the historic town of Arques. This region has been flooded twice in the last 2 months, and market gardeners are feeling desperate seeing their crops destroyed.
The tomatoes are completely ruined.
Across the Channel, more than 250 flood warnings were issued in England, and hundreds of householders were ordered to evacuate.
You can normally keep it at bay with floodgates and things like that. About 9:30 this morning, we realised it was going to rise a lot quicker and faster and deeper than predicted.
Water levels on the River Trent in the East Midlands were at 20-year highs. In the south, residents battling inundation couldn't raise help.
Police aren't interested in closing the road, despite the fact I'm amazed there hasn't been an accident. Fire brigade not interested, no one's interested.
Multiple train services were cancelled across the country, and parts of eastern England recorded nearly the entire average rainfall for January in just the first few days of the month. Jenny Lavelle, ABC News.
A River Murray resident whose house was destroyed during last summer's floods has been left in limbo, unable to even start rebuilding his home. The whole ordeal has left the 50-year-old 6 months behind where he should be, compounding what he has described as the most mentally challenging year of his life.
2 patches of grass on James Bailey's property in Walker Flat is all he can control about his current living situation.
Everything was unplanned, unpredicted, so you're not in any type of control at all of what's actually going on with your life.
The gardener could only watch as his home slowly rotted away under the River Murray.
It's the only way you can get out here now is on a kayak.
When the water receded, he took up the offer of a free demolition. 3 months later, his property, which is privately leased to him, sits empty after he was told his boundaries were not registered with the Land Titles Office.
They basically said, we're not going to survey it because we don't have the information, and they're not going to build it because fear of being litigations.
He now lives in a caravan, 6 months behind where he should be.
You'd probably see a footing and possibly a frame and maybe even the floor.
James Bailey didn't expect the recovery process to be quick and easy, but he never anticipated that it would take just one piece to fall out of place for his whole rebuilding journey to come grinding to a halt. And his situation isn't uncommon. Many people are facing unexpected hurdles all along the river. In Paisley, Terry Grant is hard at work, restoring his retirement home. During the peak, the solar panels on his roof were the only sign his house was still there. When the flood passed, he was also told to demolish, but learnt that he'd need to wait 2 years for the ground to dry to rebuild.
It will always be wet. So it wouldn't matter if you waited 5 years. Do a soil sample, the ground's still going to be wet.
A disaster which lasted months, still causing problems a year on. Ethan Ricks, ABC News, the River Murray.
Flood and fire events have sent insurance premiums skyrocketing, forcing many consumers to choose between cover and essentials amid the cost of living crisis. Experts say millions of households are paying at least 1 month's salary for premiums.
Fran Ross was stunned when she got her latest home insurance renewal.
I felt absolutely sick to my stomach. I thought there's no way I'm going to be able to deal with this.
The Brisbane resident faced a 400% increase to her premium, a fifth of her weekly age pension.
I would have expected a slight increase, but that was absolutely extreme.
Experts say many families are being priced out.
That's getting to the stage of unaffordable or extreme insurance stress. In fact, 1.24 million, or 1 in 8 Australian households, is now facing at least 4 weeks of gross household income to buy a meaningful house insurance premium.
Over the previous 12 months, what we found was that the median household in Australia was facing a 28% increase in home insurance premiums. That's the largest I've seen in 20 years.
Severe flood events in 2022 have left insurers stretched, and they've passed on costs. Inflated premiums aren't expected to subside for some time.
We are facing a future with increasing natural disasters due to climate change, and can expect that unless we have rapid emissions reductions, that those costs will carry on increasing.
We need people moved away from high cost, high exposure areas if we're going to bring the price down, and that's a really long-term proposition. I think we all have to accept insurance is up a lot more, and that's here to stay for a while.
The ABC has spoken to numerous Queensland residents with similar stories to Miss Ross's, facing insurance hikes of anywhere from 30 to more than 100%. It's left many people wondering whether it's a safety net they can afford to live without.
I hate the thought of having to go without insurance.
Alex Brewster, ABC News Brisbane.
To finance now, and a key component of our energy transition is stalling. Here's Daniel Ziffer.
We need lithium for things like batteries for electric vehicles, and Australia became about the best in the world at digging it up. So why has Core Lithium paused operations at its Northern Territory mine, which only opened a year and a bit ago? Well, check out the collapse in the price of lithium. Down more than 85% in the past year, it's fallen in half since the end of October. That mightn't make sense with electric vehicles booming and an energy transition that needs batteries, but there's a glut of the stuff. Expect it to be a bit like old gold mines. They're currently reopening as gold prices hit record highs. And as demand increases, the lithium mine will likely shake off the cobwebs and keep digging. Core Lithium slumped today, the overall ASX market down a touch, 1.7% lower for the shortened first week of trading for 2024. European inflation was in line with what people expected there, and that buoyed those markets, and the value of our dollar went nowhere against the US in trading today. And you've got to love the French. Their second biggest grocer, Carrefour, has booted Pepsi products off its shelves due to what it calls unacceptable price rises. Earlier, it protested what's called shrinkflation by putting this sign next to products where the volume or weight fell, meaning it got smaller, and thus the price effectively rose. With our tight duopoly, don't expect it to happen here. And that's finance.
The Tour Down Under will honour Melissa Hoskins with a 1-minute silence ahead of stage 1 of the women's race at Hahndorf next week. Race organisers have acknowledged it's been an emotional time in the wake of the champion cyclist's death. The 32-year-old was allegedly hit by a car her husband, Rowan Dennis, was driving outside their Medindi home on Saturday evening.
It's obviously been a super challenging time for the entire cycling community, and having, the international peloton, the media, the fans come to Adelaide at this time. I think it's really important that we get this opportunity to be around each other, to help each other through this.
The third cricket test between Australia and Pakistan has swung dramatically after the home team collapsed to give the tourists a narrow first innings lead. But Josh Hazlewood led a dramatic late fight back with 4 wickets to set up a likely series whitewash for Australia tomorrow.
A day of wildly fluctuating fortune started almost sedately as Marnus Labuschagne looked to set a platform.
That is classy and elegant.
His mentor also looked in good touch.
Delightful.
Not so Pakistan's fielders.
That's his knee is dug in there.
It wasn't the only mishap.
Oh, what's going on there? That was ridiculous.
Labuschagne brought up a patient 50.
Nice shot from Marnus, and this is going to race through to the fence for 4.
A distracted Steve Smith held up play for almost 5 minutes as ground staff scrambled to remove a ball of tape on the sight screen.
That's it. Raise your arms.
He was out soon after for 38, hitting straight into a stacked offside field.
Can you believe it? He's fallen for it.
The next over, Labuschagne was out for 60 to a stunner from Salman Agha.
Wow, what a ripper that is!
Travis Head made it to 10 before his miserable series continued.
How far is that going? Given out.
By contrast, Mitch Marsh is in rare touch, bringing up his 4th consecutive Test 50.
Another fine innings.
But he was out just 4 runs later to the bowling of Ahmed Jamal.
Ouch, just like that.
That triggered a collapse as Jamal took the last 4 wickets for just 6 runs to end up with 6 for the innings. Pakistan had a 14-run first innings lead, but almost immediately were in trouble thanks to a Mitch Starc special. Then, just like in the first innings, Josh Hazlewood struck in the very next over.
Throws the bat at it. Hazlewood gets his man. Edged. I don't believe what I'm seeing here.
And then picked up an astonishing 3 wickets in his last over to take his Test tally to 249 as Pakistan fell apart to be 7 for 68 at stumps. An Australian win tomorrow looks a formality. David Mark, ABC News, Sydney.
Adelaide United's 3-match homestand has started with a 2-2 draw against men's A-League ladder leader Wellington Phoenix. The Reds played the last 10 minutes with 10 men, and the result keeps them just outside the top 6 on goal difference.
Pre-game, Carl Viet mentioned his biggest headache was the Reds' defensive frailty. Just 15 minutes in and Wellington handed the coach a migraine.
Brilliant transition football once again from Wellington.
But 10 minutes later, the Reds were back on even terms. Both sides went to the break still locked together, but it only took the Phoenix 60 seconds of the second half to again expose United's shortcomings at the back.
Bovalina's clearance is poor, and Barbarouses just cannot stop scoring at the moment.
The boys' response after that was first class, and they did everything that we wanted in the second half tonight, but get those extra couple of goals to get us the win.
They did get one though, thanks to the power and class of teenager Nestori Irankunda.
Still going, Ibasuke, 2-2.
We're very fortunate that we still got him for the rest of the season. And, he's exciting. He makes everyone smile, doesn't he?
Left out of the starting lineup for the previous 3 matches, Iran Kunda returned refreshed and demonstrating why German giant Bayern Munich signed him for a record price.
I thought his response tonight was outstanding. He was the most dangerous player on the pitch by a long way.
All the good work was nearly undone, though, after Ben Warland was given a red card.
I was probably more disappointed the last 15, 20. Once the red card came in as well, I felt like that was the time that we could have taken advantage.
The Reds' next assignment is MacArthur at Hindmarsh Stadium on Monday night. Neil Cross, ABC News.
Rafael Nadal's comeback will continue tonight in Brisbane after the 22-time Grand Slam champion stormed past Queenslander Jason Kubler into the quarterfinals. The Spanish star had the sold-out crowd entertained, not just by his tennis.
Another win, another statement made. This time it took just 83 minutes.
The comeback continues.
Brisbane's Jason Kubler, no match for Rafa.
One of the hardest shots in the game. He makes it look easy.
The only thing to faze the 37-year-old, a time violation from the umpire for taking too long at the bathroom between sets.
Honestly, Brisbane is very humid, and I had to change every single piece.
Nothing will happen. You have to give me? Why?
I thought it was on time, honestly. No, then he told me I was 4 seconds late. I don't know if it was me. I don't think so in that time, but something happened in the period of time. But I am slow, I know that, and I'm going to keep trying to improve in 2024.
34-year-old Victoria Azarenka isn't taking a step back this year.
That's aggressive.
Yelena Ostapenko sending it to a deciding third set.
Second set, Ostapenko. The ride continues.
After 2.5 hours, Brisbane's first semi-finalist emerged.
The most magnificent of matches.
Well, with Yelena, sometimes you just have to put on helmet and try to like stay in there. But she's an incredible player.
Australian James Duckworth made the men's #1 seed work for his place in the semi-final.
From wide gets it done. There it is. Holgeruna.
In the United Cup, France is through to the semi-finals after surviving over Norway 2-1 in a marathon 6.5-hour contest. Jessica Stewart, ABC News.
Time to check the weather details now, and tonight's photo from Dave Underwood was taken at sunset from Horseshoe Bay in Port Elliot. It was dry and hot across Adelaide today. The mercury kept climbing till it reached 35 degrees soon after 3 o'clock this afternoon, after an overnight low of 22.6. Further afield, conditions were humid with showers and storms to western districts and afternoon storms about the Flinders, mid-north and far north of Yorke Peninsula. It soared to 43 degrees in Oodnadatta, 32 in Naracoorte. Clouds scattered over the country is associated with troughs and lows that will continue to generate heavy showers and storms across the tropics and western areas of Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria, while maintaining high humidity in the east and heat across the interior and the north. Those systems will create unsettled conditions over our state in the coming days. So the usual storms for Darwin tomorrow and showers for Brisbane, but a fine day for the other capital cities. Sunny and 25 in Hobart, 33 for Perth. Back home, humid conditions with showers, areas of rain and possibly severe thunderstorms extending from the west before a southwesterly change. 36 for Cooper Pedy. Warm to hot and stormy across much of the south, 30 for Clare, 27 for Kingscote. There is a severe thunderstorm warning for parts of the West Coast, Eyre Peninsula, Flinders, Mid-North and the pastoral districts. And there's a downy mildew advice for these forecast districts. Rain and possible storms from late morning for Adelaide tomorrow, 31 for the city, down to 22 overnight. On the waters, east to southeasterly winds to 15 knots, turning easterly in the evening. Seas below 1 metre. The sun will rise at about 6:10 and set soon after 8:30. And looking ahead, showers and storms on Sunday with 28 degrees, morning showers and 23 on Monday. Then it's looking a bit more summery midweek, up to 29 on Thursday and 31 degrees for this time next week. That is the latest from the Adelaide newsroom. Thanks for your company. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.